Hey everyone, welcome back to She Birth Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Michelle, and today's guest is Nathan. Hi, Nathan.
Hey,
Thank you so much for being a guest today.
thank you for having me.
So, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself as an author?
As myself as an author, well, I am a guy who likes to think outside of the box and really just wants to blow people away with something that they've never seen before, and that just completely came out of left field. And right now, I'm currently working on a post-apocalyptic series where civilization is making a comeback.
Nice, nice. What inspired your book that we're about to talk about, The Sapien
Uh,
Empire?
so it's a synthesis of two ideas. So the first idea is me just realizing what a post-apocalyptic era is. So if you give yourself the perspective of history, every time a society has collapsed, from the perspective of the people that came afterwards, that was post-apocalyptic. So like the Middle Ages, from the perspective of the Romans, is post-apocalyptic. The collapse in the Bronze Age and around 1100s BC, for the people afterwards, that was their post-apocalyptic. But as we can see from the ebbs and flows of history, something always comes back to fill the void. So I said to myself, well, us deal with what comes back. And then the second idea comes from a lot of inaction that we've seen from the UN. So World War II happens, it's devastating. They formed the UN as a way of sort of getting people to peacefully cooperate. And then that often just rarely happens. And you see a lot of tragedies that happen around the world. And with nothing being done about it, and it can break your heart. And so I think in a moment of naivety, I just said to myself, I wish there was just some group, some vigilante just fixing all these problems and doing justice where like it's not really getting delivered. So I said to myself, I said, well, hey, wait a minute. What if, as they're rebuilding civilization, they say, let's do it right this time. Let's not repeat the mistakes of the past. Let's not give in to our human behavior that we have a tendency that we've had a tendency to do for millennia, and that's what just kickstarted this whole ball rolling in my life.
Oh, nice. So, what was your hardest scene to write in the book?
Hardest scene?
Yeah.
I don't think there was a scene in particular that was hard to write. I think in terms of just like in terms of it's a difficult event to
Mhm.
process. There are scenes in the book that like were they're not comfortable scenes, but I mean it's meant to hammer in a point, and so just because you write something that doesn't make people comfortable doesn't mean you as an author necessarily find it comfortable yourself. So
Mhm.
there's one scene where uh, it happens around a third of the way into the book, where like some of the protagonist's friends die, but how they die is really just brutal and gruesome. And so that was not a comfortable thing for me to write, but I did it just to sort of progress the plot and hammer in a point, and it'll make sense as people read the story. So I would say that's the most difficult to write.
Oh, wow. What characters did you relate to the most? If you
Uh, I would say I related the most to the protagonist, Shindo Dekan, just because he has a lot of qualities of me that I sort of put into him. As they say, as a writer, a little bit of you has to exist in every character, and I think a fair amount exists in the protagonist. So I just had I we think we've all had the fantasy of what would I do um I could if I ran the world, like how would I like do things, and so and being that the main character eventually will come to a position of power, I and that's just how it that's some what
Mhm.
inspired me to write him, and I would say if anything, that's who I most relate to.
Okay, okay. So, did you want to read a little bit from your book for us?
Sure. I'll just start from the beginning just to give people a sneak peek of what they're diving into. All right, guys, the Sapien Empire, Part 1, The Machine Right. Chapter 1. It was about time someone in this broken society did something right. If nobody else was going to take out Arch-Lord Chief Vibran Magritte, Shinda Dakan had to do it himself. The scar on the side of his face, in the shape of gaping wolf jaws, wasn't his only reason. Looking at it every day reminded him of what happened to those that failed the Arch-Lord Chief. Lately, though, it was reminding him of the carnage Vibran wrought using the machines Shindo had been making for him since the age of 14. After 10 years, Shindo decided the people of the domain deserved better. The young man was covered in sweat and grime as the day neared its end, and he hauled into place the hydraulic arm of the mech. After 3 months of work, the machine was almost done. Carefully, Shindo guided the arm toward the chassis using the overhead crane. It screeched as the crane moved overhead upon rust-colored rails within the cavernous space of the shop garage. He wouldn't be sneaking up on the supreme leader of the domain and stabbing him in the back, nor lying in wait with sniper rifle in hand. Rather, Shindo would lure Vibrant into a trap using what he knew best, his gift in engineering one-of-a-kind machines. Like this. Such aptitude had earned him his moniker, the Machine Right. The machine had two mechanical arms attached to the chassis, which itself sat upon a pair of tracked wheels. The driver sat in the middle and operated the machine from behind a simple protective cage. Shindo often thought it looked like an artificial person, one whose massive bulk in no way indicated the thin body frame of its maker. Shindo climbed on top of the vehicle, tried to lock the arm in place, but realized he had forgotten the final pin. He dropped down and walked past the forge toward the fabrication table. He rifled through drawers underneath, trying to find the right part. The table held memories. It was here he drafted the plans for what would become the ghost flame tanks, chained battering rams, and climbing jackhammers, all of them used by Vibran Magritte on his warpath as he conquered the other three city-states, creating the domain in the process. The Arch-Lord Chief under Lord Chief Vic, their lieutenants, and anyone else who helped him ascend to power would pay. Shindo needed them all in one place. Vibran had asked him several weeks ago to work on something new, something that would truly outdo himself. The Arch-Lord Chief would get just that, and Vibran would be unable to resist showing off his new toy. That's where Shindo would get them. There it was, the pin he needed. He went back to the machine, slid the pin in, and did some last-minute spot welding. He climbed down from the mech, lifted his visor, and looked up at the fruits of his labor. Finally complete. Shindo hung up his tools on a pegboard adjacent to the fabrication table. He always went straight to bed right after a day's work. Tonight was no different. Shindo walked to a small wash basin in the back of the shop garage. The cold water always felt refreshing upon his tan skin at the end of the day. He sloshed water all over his bald head and wiped his face, gingerly stroking the scar. It was throbbing especially hard today, almost as if it were fresh. Maybe it was because of overexertion, but Shindo knew the real reason. It throbbed as one last reminder. Don't back down. You're so close. He took off his welding apron and hung it up beside the small cot in the corner of the shop garage. His one piece, which often felt like a second skin, suddenly felt tight. He undid the strings on the arms, legs, and torso of the body-covering garment. Shindo draped the singular piece of clothing over a chair at the foot of his bed, shut down the lights of the shop garage, and lied down. The silence of the room was only interrupted by the occasional low rumbling of the forge. The plan he had set in motion would see its fruition tomorrow. However, unlike previous nights, as Shindo drifted off to sleep, he found himself not thinking about that. Instead, a much smaller, but no less important memory had come to mind. After years of creating machines for battle, Shindo had taken the time to craft a prosthetic arm for a boy named Tate. Tomorrow would be for people like him. First day of spring, 9th year of the domain, 9 months earlier. Is that 5 minutes?
That's great. That's really great. So how much research did you have to did you need to do for your book?
Um, I haven't um like added up the hours, but a lot of it just involved so the book starts in the Pacific Northwest where I'm from, and so a lot of it's just a matter of they have to use local resources because obviously international commerce systems don't exist in the beginning of the book. So a lot of it was, do they have the resources to make everything that I want um, um, within like a very reasonable area? So one of the things, for example, as I say, is that they use gunpowder because they have access to sulfur, but they don't have access to smokeless powder. So every time like they fire, there's smoke. And what else? Also because they also have access to sulfur just because there's a like sort of tectonic activity nearby. Oh,
Hmm.
but they also don't have access to rubber, so like all the vehicles have tracks or like they're metallic. They don't,
Wow.
or they have treads just because they don't have access to like rubber wheels. So yeah, there's just stuff like that, and then thinking about like where do you get rock for your concrete? Can you make concrete? Enough to sound credible, enough to sound believable, but not so much that it feels like I'm writing and telling you a technical manual.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Wow. How did you come up with the title for your book?
Oh, okay. So if you look at history again, most empires, there's like a sort of a theme around them. So, I mean, Britain was an empire of the sea, the Aztecs were an empire of blood, the Romans an empire of gold. Well, because I have a very central humanitarian theme to my novel series, I wanted to just have like an empire for the people because it's kind of done in the guise of those historical epics, I guess you could say, from the 1950s, where a hero rises up and spreads out and conquers. Although here he's not really conquering, he's helping. And so it's an empire for the people. And I said, okay, well, the human empire doesn't really have a good ring to it. Let's take our Latin name for our species, Homo sapiens, take the final word sapiens, drop the final S, the Sapien Empire. Ooh, that's got a good ring to it. And so I had another author who has done quite well say he liked it. A lot of people liked the title, and so I stuck with it.
Nice. Nice. It is a nice title. It is.
Thank you.
So you said earlier that you was working on another book. Can you talk about that a little bit about that? I know you can't give too much away because it's new, but
Yeah, sure. So, this is the book everyone's looking at right now is the first in an 8-book series. I'm currently almost halfway through the revisions of the second draft for the second book in the series, and all I can really say for now is, in the second book of the series, they'll spread out. They go even further. They go into the plains. They go into the Sonoran Desert in the south, and they come across some people that really make the main characters just sort of step back and assess and say, "Hey, are we doing it right? Or is this better? Or what are we making if we're just going to repeat the same mistakes of the past? Do we really understand ourselves?" And so that's all I'll say for now.
that's nice. That's nice. And do you have a title for it already, or are you working on that too?
No, I right now, I mean, obviously it's up in the air for later titles in the series, but all the books in the series have a title right now. So the next book will be called The Sapien Empire: The Realms of Restarted Civilization.
Oh, nice, nice. And where can my listeners find your books?
A lot of places. So Amazon, Kobo Books, Apple Books, I think Indigo Chapters and Barnes and Noble, they are able to, if they want, order copies and display it into their stores. Uh, yeah, those are just some of the places that you can use because they use Draft Digital and it puts it on a bunch of websites and places. But yeah, that's just some of the places you guys can get my book for paperback, hardback, ebook, and audiobook.
Nice. Oh, so you have it in audio?
Yes, I added an audio because I think you can reach a wider audience for it because people
Yes.
can just listen to it while doing other things. And yeah, I got that done at the end of April, and it was released in early May.
Nice. That's what I was about to ask you too, because I do audiobooks. I love audiobooks. So definitely, I'm gonna check it out.
Thank you.
So my last and final question before I let you go: what advice would you give authors who are starting out as an author like yourself?
Okay, I love this question. My advice is be careful of who you take advice from. So
Yes.
early in my experience, I had someone try to sort of tell me which way I should go, and I've learned from other authors and professionals ever since that it was just incredibly bogus, a lot of the stuff he said. So your friends mean well, your family means well, random strangers you meet on the street mean well, but unless this person is a literary agent, editor, publisher, author themselves, unless they work in the industry, take what they say with a grain of salt.
Yes, definitely. Because they can give you like bad advice,
Mhm.
really bad. So I want to thank you so much, Nathan, for being a guest on my podcast today and telling us about your book.
Well, thank you for having me.
You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Nathan. If you like to purchase his book, he said that they're available on all platforms, including audiobook, which I'm excited about. So I'm going to check that out on audiobook because I love audiobooks. Everyone knows I do. So it's called The Sapien Empire, and he is going with a series of it. So hope you all check that out. And thank you all so much for listening to She Blurbs podcast. I just want to let you all know that this is my very last interview for the time being since I'm in school. So yeah, thank you all so much for supporting my podcast. I greatly appreciate it. See you next time when I come back for my interviews. Thank you all so much for supporting me. Bye.